right into the presentation. We have a lot of information. Can I just have a show of hands who is not here at the November forum? Okay, that's good. All right. So the first half of the presentation is going to be kind of a follow-up summary, going back to a lot of the information that we did at the first public forum. So I'm glad that you're here, so you get a chance to see it. So I'm going to start off with introducing the design team. Again, that first part, I'll talk about the background for the fire department operations, how we serve the town, the existing conditions of the fire station and their current state. Talk about the feasibility study process and why we're here tonight. And then I'll give you some of the information that we showed at the first public forum back in November. And then the second half of the presentation will be everything we've been working on since November. We'll get a little bit into the background of the selected site, which is known as Goulet Playground or Riverdale Field. We'll talk a little bit about the floor plan development, the site layout. We'll talk about the facade renderings that we've been working on. We seem to have some repetitive questions that we've been receiving, so I'll touch on those and some of the answers that we've been working on those questions. And of course, we're going to get into cost estimates and how that impacts the taxpayers. We'll talk about next steps as we lead up to the May town meeting and election, and we'll also have a question and answer period. However, if you have any questions at any point in time, please raise your hand. I'll be happy to answer if there's something you'd like to go over or have me go over in depth. So again, my name is Adam Gaudet, the fire chief, Chief David White, up here in the front. We also have the folks that are in charge of overseeing this feasibility study by charter here in town. That's the Building Planning Construction Committee. So I did see the chairman, Mike Bowden, is here. Paul Badesian, our vice chairman, is here. Stephen Nye, Brian Paulus, I saw, John Gifford, and Shane Picard. They're all here tonight as well. I want to thank them for their efforts. We have an owner's project manager. That's someone that we hire as a third-party consultant, if you will, to be a buffer between us and the architect and kind of help guide the town through the process with the architect. And with us tonight from Cardinal Construction is Brent Artho and also Shane Sampson. And with us tonight also are the main project design consultants from Castle Booz Associates, and that's Mike McKeon and Renee Croto, and they're also here in the front. So these gentlemen are going to help me answer questions in depth if you have any. So a little bit about the background about the fire department here in Northbridge. We have one full-time fire chief and a part-time assistant. We're what is known as a combination department. We have 17 full-time firefighters and 17 on-call firefighters, which fluctuates at any given time, the on-call that is. We provide fire and emergency services and what is known as 24/7 advanced life support, or ALS. That's the highest level of ambulance emergency services you can get. Some towns have what they call BLS, or basic life support. We are fortunate in this town to have ALS. They cover 19 square miles of town. The population in 2015, most recent data was over 16,000. And recent data, FY 2019, they performed 3,370 service calls throughout the town. A list of equipment, 3 engine companies. We have an aerial ladder, it's 49 feet long, a heavy rescue, several forestry trucks, 2 ambulances, and then utility trailers and utility vehicles and trailers. They operate out of 2 stations. The main station is the headquarters located at 193 Main Street. That building was constructed in 1923 and was actually donated to the town back in the 70s by the shop. That building was built by the owners of the Whiten Mill. We have a second station, what's known as a substation in Rockdale. It's unmanned. There's no full-time personnel in that building. It essentially is a storage building, and it provides equipment for on-call firefighters to access when there's calls in that area. That also was not built by the town. That was donated by the Rockdale Mill, and it was constructed back in the 50s. So for the record, the town of Northbridge has never built a fire station by itself. So a little bit about the conditions of the building, well documented going back over 20 years in terms of the problems that we've had in this building. Again, built in 1923. Here's some pictures, deteriorated concrete foundation, facade, windowsills, doors, a lot of leaks, standing water. This is the exterior of the building. Very narrow, as you can see. The building wasn't built for trucks here in 2020. It was built again in 1923. We have interior deficiencies, again, standing water. If you go online, these pictures will look a lot better, kind of hard up here. But again, major issues of standing water, roof leaks, and doors, and a lot of things are out of code and just not up to current standards. There are a lot of life safety concerns with the building. There is no ADA compliance. We also have poor utilities and other mechanicals associated with the building. And these things are also prevalent at the Rockdale station. This is some views of the Rockdale station and some lists, structural damage, cracking, foundations, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully you did take advantage of, I know we had a fire station open house at the headquarters a couple weeks ago. We'll be doing another one, so if you do hear that call, we'll be happy to give you a tour, or you can make special arrangements to reach out to the fire chief and his staff and be happy to give you a tour of the building. So a little bit of background about the feasibility study that we've been undertaking. Actually, there was a feasibility study that was performed back in 2001 with the then Building Planning Construction Committee. And it was needed then due to the fact of the serious poor conditions of the two fire stations. 2006 was the first time funding was set aside for analysis such as the study we're taking now, other types of testing that can be done out of that fund. $100,000 set aside in 2006. The project sat idle for many years. There was a lot of other things going on in town. In the early 2000s, we had construction for the high school, and the first time the town had undertaken such a major project, high-cost project such as that. Middle 2008, 2009, 2010, we saw the obviously the recession, so there wasn't any discussion about new development and new costs being explored at that time. And then the last few years, we've been working on the Balmer project, another much-needed project in town. That's happily to say it's under construction and going well. In 2017, the Board of Selectmen made it a goal for me when I came in to my administration, along with Chief White. We both came in 2017 to undertake an effort to explore a new fire station or fire stations. The Building Planning Construction Committee hired Cardinal Construction, our OPM, in the summer of 2017. At that point, the consultant, as long as several staff, myself, the chief, a couple others, began working on preliminary site research. And we also developed an RFQ, or a request for qualifications, that would lead to the hiring of Castle Booz in 2019. And then this past fall, again, we started undertaking different elements of the feasibility study, which included programming, site evaluations, response time analysis, and site recommendations, and I'll get into that a little bit in detail now. So in November, we unveiled all this information. This was the programming effort that was undertaken. That's basically your space needs, your operational needs, building needs. There was staff interviews, space use analysis undertaken, and then planning diagrams. Those colors represent needs of the fire department, and then they then relate to the floor plan. So when you do the space analysis and the planning diagrams, you're kind of trying to figure out what should be next to each other. Living space, utility space, et cetera, et cetera. So this was the first floor plan that we developed back in the fall. The reddish color represents the bays. We have 5 double bays. We also have an outbuilding to the rear. That's a cost-saving measure, if you will. It's built with not the same high construction material as a fire station itself. It's more of a garage or storage facility that allows us to take 4,000 square feet out of the building and build it at a lower cost. The top part is the living quarters for our full-time firefighters in the green. Orange represents different utility areas, other areas that are associated with living quarters, such as a kitchen and dining space. The tan in the middle represents conference rooms. The gray is utility rooms. The lower grayish blue color, those are administrative offices for the chief and his officers. And then the left is what we're calling the planning wing, or the code offices that are currently in the annex at 14 Hill Street. And I'll get into why we're proposing that in a few slides. So while the programming was going on, we also undertook a more in-depth analysis for our site research. We looked at all town-owned land. We probably started with over 100 sites in town, all ranging from 0.1 acres to over 20 acres. We also looked at private properties in town with large acreage, commercial properties that were for sale at the time, and we eventually reduced this to 21 sites. As the working group continued to work with the Building Plan Construction Committee and undertook different evaluations and closer look at these sites, they were further reduced to 11. When we were thinking about doing a feasibility study, we obviously couldn't include 100 sites or 20 or even 11 in the in-depth analysis that we're undertaking. So we had to undertake some effort to reduce to a reasonable amount that could be studied. Most were reduced or eliminated due to size, wetlands constraints, or other development restrictions. So these are 11, I'm not going to list them. Some of them we're not talking about anymore, but there were 11 that went through another series of further in-depth analysis. So the chart on the right represents one of the pages that we use for the building committee and the consultants to evaluate the sites. From that, we further reduced them to 6 sites, so 5 of the final 11 were eliminated. You can see some were too small. Site number 6 was privately owned, and there's a town parcel right next door, so we can have that one at no cost, so we eliminated that one. One of the private sites was sold during the feasibility study process. And then 14 Hill Street, which is the annex, across from Town Hall, complications with the National Historic Register, and then the site being too small, that was eliminated. So we're undertaking a needs analysis, we're undertaking a site evaluation. The third major component of the study in the fall was a response time analysis. According to the chief, National Fire Protection Association, our consultants, response time is the most important criteria we should be looking at as far as putting together a fire station location, because time saves lives, it saves property. It's the most important factor that we've been looking at. So you can see this is out of our report that's online right now from the response time in terms of where the calls in Northbridge occur. So as you can see from the left, these are all incidents 2016, 2019, just from a single location. So if we went to a site 10 times, it's not showing 10 dots, it's just one. But as you can see the visits that we take are pretty widespread across town. Some of the concerns at the first public forum are we concerned about locating or moving farther away from Whitensville, which is obviously in the lower southwest corner. Our argument for, again, being centrally located is to try to be equidistant to all the town boundaries and try to cover all the calls within a certain time frame, improved time frame. You can see on the right, the highest number of calls that we had in the last 3 years, actually Beaumont Nursing Home, over 800 calls, which is obviously in the northern part of town. And then Milford Regional in the Plumbers Corner area, St. Camilla's up on Hill Street, et cetera, et cetera. So not every building in town is not important, but again, we were searching for the goal of being able to cover the town the most optimum time frame, and therefore the central location has become very important throughout this study. So a little bit more about the response time analysis. Again, there's a standard that's put out there by the NFPA. It's called NFPA Standard 1720. It was developed in 2014. For a town of our makeup, a suburban area, a town of density 500 to 1,000 square feet per mile, we're shooting for the goal of 80% of the town in 10 minutes or less. Based on the size of our whole town can be covered in 10 minutes. So what we looked at is any site that could improve based on what we had already. So our current station covers the town in 78.3% in 8 minutes or less. So in the very lower corner, southwest corner of the existing station, green is less than a minute. And then as you further get out, you get towards the 8-minute timeline, which is the red dash, and everything outside of that is over 10 minutes. Over 8 minutes. So we did not include the Rockdale station as part of this analysis because it's not manned. When a call comes out, the call goes into the headquarters and they leave with equipment from there. If there's a structure fire or other need, the on-call staff, if they are closer to headquarters, will come to headquarters. If not, they will go to the Rockdale station, grab equipment, and meet the folks that were coming from the headquarters. So that's why we didn't include that in the analysis, because, again, our main our main access point leaving from is the headquarters on Main Street. So of the analysis of the 6 sites that we have been looking at, we eliminated 198 Church Ave, and I'll show you that in a second. It was just so small that we weren't moving forward with that. You can see that 4 of the 6 sites provide for a better response time than the existing station. The highest being our selected site, which is known as Goulet, 1681 Providence Road. Covers the town at 94.5%. So we felt that is quite a jump. You can see the 2 compared against each other. You can see how Goulet is more centrally located than the southwest location of the current headquarters, covering the town at 78.3%. We can cover the town at 94.5%, so you'll see more green, more yellow, and less red. So we took all of the analysis that was being done in the fall. We again, through another evaluation criteria process, ranked the sites using different weights to different items related to development, related to the response time, etc. And that led to some of the sites being ranked lower than others, kind of falling to the bottom, if you will, due to the fact that the response time was actually less or not as well as the Goulet site could provide, in addition to the size of the sites to meet the program. So you can see 198 Church Ave, that is the Rockdale Legion, American Legion area. You can see very difficult to fit everything on there. Same thing with 44 Cross Street, that's the Northbridge Elementary School. When we're looking at these sites, we're looking at not only the building, but of course parking, access, circulation, room for on-site training. Right now, at the current station, we don't have any on-site training there. Outside, it takes place at the sewer plant because we have more room outside. It's very important from a training standpoint to have that room. And then the site on the right, again, response time and size, that one fell. That's the parking lot that's across the street from the existing fire station located at 180 Main Street. 2 other sites that fell lower or were ranked lower than our preferred site were ranked lower again due to response time. Poorer response time. In addition to that, they had major development restrictions. You can see on the right, 644 Providence Road, that's about 20 acres or so across the street from the sewer plant. You can see the shaded orange area, that's topography. And also there's a steep slope that comes off of the road and a ditch. And then the site on the left is the Linwood Playground site. We also have topography issues to the north, or the right side from your view. And obviously we have a major impact to a very active field and recreation site. So because of that, those deficiencies in some of the other sites, and the pros to this site, this one's become the selected site. So this again is 1681 Providence Road. It's known as Riverdale Field or Goulet Playground. It has, from a pro standpoint, it has the highest response time at 94.5%. The parcel size, because it's 23 acres, provides for the ability to fit the entire floor plan, storage areas, on-site training, parking, circulation, future expansion if needed, and great access to the main road. It's town-owned, so from a site development cost, that's attractive more than some of the private sites. And obviously there's no demolition required here because there's no building on the site. Some of the cons that we heard about or discussed about the site was potential no visibility of the building from the road. And also, if we developed towards the rear, we would possibly get impacted by potential regulatory restrictions due to the wetlands and steep slopes. We may have struggle getting permits there. So that's become, this is what we unveiled in November. This is the selected site that we feel meets the overall needs of the fire department. Progress 2. So everything we've been working on since then. So this is some of the efforts that the Building Planning Construction Committee has been undertaking. We know how important it is to get feedback from you, so we're not only looking at this to just get information out that we've been working on, but also to get feedback from you, so hopefully there's an open dialogue later in the meeting. And we want to hear what we haven't shown, what information you need. Our goal is that come May, you'll have all the information that you need to make an informed decision about the project that we are proposing. So the building committee, again, has been meeting. Their meetings are basically every 2 weeks. They're posted, they're public meetings, anyone can attend them. Going back to 2017, we started working on this project when we first hired the OPM. I lose count, but somewhere 25 to 35 meetings in that time frame. So we had the November public forum, the one tonight, and we're planning another one like this in April. The selectmen meet bi-weekly. I provide an update every selectmen's meeting in terms of where the status is of the fire station. All these meetings are public and they're also televised on cable. The fire department had a recent open house in February, and we're planning another one in March and possibly April. The chief has been working with his staff, his 34 folks or so, regularly meeting and discussing this project and getting feedback from them. We've had 2 major staff presentations that the chief and I presented, these types of presentations to them to get feedback on. We had one in November, and then we just had one last week. The Finance Committee is beginning their budget process for FY 2021 as we lead up to the May town meeting. So we'll be in front of them in 2 days, Wednesday night, March 4th. And then the Finance Committee meets every Wednesday, essentially between now and May.
Yeah, you talked about the potential impact from wetlands on this site. Yep. Is that just going to make the site smaller, or is the site really dry where you're going to build? Or?
Yeah, so I'll show you a future slide where we actually have a better layout. This was just to get something on paper. But it's 23 acres. The wetlands are to the rear, so there's over 10 acres of buildable land, so we shouldn't be impacted by them. But that was one of the things we were thinking about when we were locating the site and working with the architects in terms of layout, where it should be. That's one of the things we wanted to avoid. So we'll show you we're going to be able to avoid those. So again, the Finance Committee, their meetings are coming up. Those are public, posted, you're free to attend those. Chief and I and the design team will be in front of the seniors at the Senior Center, working with the Senior Center Director on a date in March or April to have this type of discussion there. We unveiled a website in January this past year, or a month or so ago. The reason for the lateness of getting that out, we've been working on this project for a while, so we wanted to make sure we had enough information to get out to the public. So what you can find there, if you go to the website, www.northbridgefirestationproject.org, you can also get there from our town website. We have a lot of information about the project, existing conditions, there's a lot more pictures and description. We have all the plans that we've been working on, the floor plan, the facade renderings, site layouts. We have information and contact information for the design team. We've put up a list of frequently asked questions, which are evolving. We're changing them and adding to them as we get more and more questions. And all the resources that I'm talking about that I've talked about earlier, from the space programming to the response time analysis, those reports are up on the website now. And you can also, from that website, you can post questions and get my email, and you can ask any questions. So this is our effort to try and get the word out. If there's something else we should be doing here, please let me know as we gear up towards May. So a little bit more about Goulet Field. So at the annual town meeting in March of 1966, the property was purchased, again 23 acres, was purchased for $12,000. It was purchased, it was actually closed a year later in 1967 when we took ownership. The intent for that site was to build a second elementary school. But the town ended up purchasing the Cross Street School, where Northbridge Elementary is now. There was a parochial school there at one time. It closed, and rather than building on a new site, the town moved elementary students into that building. So the property's been vacant ever since. At the town meeting in May of '76, to the northwest, there's an access, or a right-of-way access that's never been used, but it's connected to the Suzanne Drive project, the Meadowood project. It was actually part of the high school feasibility study back in 1997. At that time, when they did the analysis, a similar feasibility study that we're undertaking, they did one for a new high school, and again, evaluated and ranked against other sites. The preferred site was Linwood Ave, obviously the building that we're in tonight. They found that it was too small to fit the entire program, which is the building, the parking area, circulation access, and the fields to the rear. So this site was not big enough with wetlands and some of the other restrictions that it had, and that's why the project ended up being built here. We do have some preliminary geotechnical evaluations, information or soil studies analysis from that. We have noticed that there is some ledge on the property, but nothing that we deemed a fatal flaw. Most of the ledge is to the rear, beyond the playing ground, or beyond the fields, to the woods in the back. There is some in the front, but our site is pretty flat where we're going to be building, and also we do have shallow foundations. This is basically built on slabs, so those combined, we feel that the amount of ledge there, especially by avoiding it in the back, will not be a problem. Obviously, if this goes forward, we'll be undertaking a lot more information, a lot more studies. This property was also analyzed as part of the Balmer School feasibility study back in 2017. Of the 7 sites, it was ranked 4th. Again, the issues were size, being able to fit the entire program. And one of the things I noted that came out of that was a lack of a two-way circulation bus access. If you've seen the plans for Balmer, now the buses kind of come in from the right, circulate, and then out the left. Parents drop off is the same. The circulation allows for queuing on the site. So this site, with the building and parking and everything, wouldn't have been able to do that. So again, the preferred site was the Balmer location, which is under construction now.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
That field, there's a lot of topsoil there. What happens with that when they dig that out? Is that all off-site, or do they use that on the site?
So the parts of the property that I'll show you a slide in a second. Parts of the property that we're not going to disturb are going to be left like that. So any soil that we're going to take off, the typical screening, any material that we can reuse on-site we'll use. If not, we have to make a decision about moving it off-site or storing it on-site. So all those decisions come about during the design process, which would be after May, probably fall and spring of next year, in terms of they start doing. We haven't done a survey yet, so once we do a full survey, once they have that attached to the design, they can figure out the amount of cuts on the property, the amount of fills on the property. They try to balance the site, et cetera, et cetera. So those decisions will come down the road later. But you'll see from the site layout, there's a large portion of the field that we're not touching. The floor plan evolved a little bit. You got to take a close look to see the tweaks, but essentially the same design layout with the bays, the storage building to the rear, living quarters on top, kitchen space, dining space, workout area, utility spaces, storage, again, offices in the front, conference and meeting space, and again, the planning office and building wing. And I'm going to get some specifics again about why we're doing that. One of the things that we've been talking about with some of the small sites, and has been asked of us, was to look at a 2-story option. And would we consider that, and does that make some of these other sites more viable? So we did look at this 2-story option. One of the things that we found was when you put space on top, if it's going to be open to the public, it would have to have an elevator, it would have to be accessible, handicap accessible. So in order to minimize the cost of having to go in an elevator, minimize the additional cost of the structural element. Obviously, when you do a 1-story building, the structural needs are different than a 2-story building. You don't have that weight on top. We looked at only putting the living quarters for the firefighters on the 2nd floor. But after analysis, we did find, again, higher cost, structural, the elevator, and also from talking with other fire chiefs, less efficient. It's a lot more efficient for a firefighter to run down a hallway to access equipment versus circulating through stairwells. Less efficient is obviously less safe. So this is the layout that I was talking about. So as you can see, we've tried to make efficient use of the property. We've tried to locate it towards the front, which does a couple things. It limits the impact of the wetlands to the rear and the wooded area, and where most of the ledge is. It allows us to, by being up front, we limit the amount of driveway you need, so there's a cost savings by having it up towards the front, and obviously there's a time benefit there as well. So we avoided slopes, avoiding the wetlands. This area is pretty flat. And again, one of the advantages of the site, there's no demolition, as there is with some of the other sites. The site provides for great access right off of the main road, great circulation throughout the property. Just going to walk over for a second. This is a 3-lane boulevard, if you will, that allows for cars coming and entering one way and then 2-way out. So you have the ability, when you're leaving for a fire, to come in the lower lane, to take a right, go the middle lane, to take a left. The first set of parking, that first part of diagonal parking is for on-call firefighters. So when they're arriving to a scene, they can pull in and park immediately right here, and then run in, get equipment, and join the fire trucks. This is at admin and public parking. To the back is the firefighters' employees' parking. That's where they can access their living quarters directly. This is the outbuilding that I was talking about. This is the bays. This beige shaded area, that's for overflow parking. Again, another cost-saving measurement is to, if we're not needing that every day, why do we need to have full parking and drainage? We can get away with something else. So it allows for overflow parking or also areas for training. So if we have meetings in the building, large meetings, large trainings, we do CPR classes, we have all kinds of different trainings there. With the planning wing being down here, we have the opportunity to have town meetings in here, town board meetings. So again, this site, as you saw, compared to the other sites, has plenty of room for parking, on-site training, future expansion. One of the things I wanted to mention is we have these green shaded areas here that are existing wooded areas that provide for buffers. We're surrounded by residents. It's a residential neighborhood. Obviously there's commercial, industrial across the street, and it's a high vehicle route. But one of the things we're going to try to balance during the next step, if we get to that point of design, would be to balance the amount of buffer that we have, and also the amount of visibility and use of the front here for sight distance, for signage, lighting. So with 134 feet of frontage, we have quite enough flexibility to do that, to hopefully provide visibility on those other elements in addition to maintaining a buffer. But that's something that we'd have to balance working with the neighbors in the future in terms of cost benefits of doing that. So this is our current rendering. Again, it's not a final. We're only at the feasibility stage, but we did need to put something together for materials, different elements, so that we could put together a cost estimate for you. So we did look at this building. We looked at doing all brick. We looked at other materials, less sturdy materials, if you will. This is what we came up with working with the building committee. We try to provide architectural balance with having, instead of just one flat roof or one steep roof, having some variation in roof lines, elements of light coming into the building, and we try to break up the facade. We try to break up the facade rather than having just a flat face all the way down. We try to provide some elements of regional character, just like this building in Balmer. You'll see elements of brick, elements of stone, very prevalent here in the Blackstone Valley. We have some character related to the pitched roof versus just doing a flat roof. And we also try to look at cost recognition. Again, the highest cost would have been all brick. The further away you get from brick, the lower the cost. We have metal panels up in here, which is still a durable material, but less costly and less structural needs in this area for supporting if this was all brick. That's the gable. We have the use of these areas of concrete blocks. And at the bottom, just like the high school here has when you came in through the entrance, and also at the Balmer, there's an element of stone, cast stone on the base, again, to provide some character and some relevance to architecture here in the Blackstone Valley. So now we're going to get into some of the questions, some of the questions we've been receiving regularly, and what our response has been. First question is why we are not considering a complete public safety complex as part of this project. Why are we not including the police station? So just some background information on the police station. It was built in 1960 as a light manufacturing facility. We purchased it in 1987, the land and the building for $375,000. And then we went to town meeting and obtained funds to renovate the building in 1989 at a cost of $1.4 million. So really that building's only 30 years old, even though it was built in 1960, had full renovation in 1989. It remains in very good condition. Again, if you want to reach out to the police department, they'd be happy to give you a tour. It's mainly office space. Obviously, we have some other spaces in there, but it's pretty durable. The inside, if you've been in there for meetings or visits, the inside has a durable brick material. It's not plaster, so it's not getting beat up. And most importantly, we felt that including the police station in this project would not be in the best interest of the taxpayer here in Northbridge. If you look at some of the other projects that are going on right now in the feasibility study process, you can see a very high cost to these projects. So Auburn is undertaking a very similar process that we are, with a headquarters and a substation, but they've added the police station. That project is almost $40 million estimated. Charlton, same thing, a headquarters and a substation just like us, but they're also including the police station at a cost of $20.5 million. And actually Charlton's project was recently rejected by the voters because of the police station is only 20 years old and they didn't feel it was needed. So we're at a similar standpoint. We don't think we need a police station. We're not going to ask you to pay for one now.
Just where is this going to be located, say, in regard, like where the police station is? How far on 122 and where?
Half mile? About a mile. It's about a mile north of 122, so bear with
Towards
me.
Rockdale.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually Riverdale. Yep, just give me a second and I'll go to...
So, it's near Kearns?
Almost across the street.
let me just get to the overall site. All right, so on the left...
Yes, Benson.
So this is the site. So Plumber's Corner's right here. Hope Street Police Station area is in here. This is the Riverdale site. Rockdale's up here. Doesn't really come up, but it's in the area of Riverdale Mills.
We were talking about Charlton.
So yeah,
Is there the Charlton Fire Station and the Auburn Fire Station, is that about the same number of vehicles?
I'm sorry, same number of what?
Vehicles.
The Auburn station is, yeah, they cut about the same amount.
So another question. I've showed a couple times on floor plans the building and planning wing. So just a little bit about that, the reason for this. Currently, those offices are located in the Town Hall Annex at 14 Hill Street, the old Aldrich School. It was built in 1890, so it's over 130 years old, or yeah, over 130 years old. And it's a former elementary school. That current building has 15,850 square feet of living and is over 21,000 square feet gross floor area. It's 3 stories, including a basement. The first floor is where the offices are. We have some cold storage on the second floor, and the third floor is currently cold and empty. We only have 5.5 people working out of that space. So in terms of the 15,000 square feet of living area, that's almost 3,000 square feet of living space per person that works in the building. Looking at the amount of upgrades that that building needs, again, it's over 100 years old, and it has many. The architects helped us project over the next 20 years, putting about $4 million in that building to make it current code compliant. And we spent over $11,000 in recent year, FY 2018, the data I could find, for utility costs. What we're proposing to do is take the folks, the 5.5 people out of this building, and put them in the new fire station, again, 1681 Providence Road. It'd be municipal office space, so it's a different type of construction than a fire station, but it is a part of the project. We're only proposing 1,800 square feet of living space, 1 story. It's 4 offices, a workroom with 2 stations. So we're going from 3,000 square feet per staff person to about 340 square feet per staff person. And that construction cost, as part of this project, isolating it from the rest of the project, is $828,000. And their expected utility costs in a much more efficient building, about $4,000 per year, about a third of what we pay now. Continuing on, this is a building efficiency chart of the town buildings that we own. And in this chart, we're analyzing energy use intensity. That's the amount of BTUs used per square foot by each building. The three worst buildings in town are the 2 fire stations and the annex. Fire stations kind of get, obviously they're old, doors are open all the time. Over 200 kBTU, that's 1,000 BTUs. Over 200. The average in the United States is about 124. So these buildings are very inefficient. They're costing us money to be there. The annex, 113, is more than double the office space of the town hall. So not only do we have efficient use based on the age of the building, the mechanicals in the building, but we're also doing it at from 1,800 to 15, what's that? A lot more space. So we're doing it poorly over there. So our suggestion is let's get them out of that building into a brand new building. We can do it for cheaper. It's more efficient. It'll last us a long time. And it'll cost a lot less. That's why we're proposing that.
So you're going to stop heating the old building?
So, I think I have a slide on that.
The annex, you're going to stop heating the annex? Because that cost doesn't go away.
Well, we're not going to heat it as if it were office space, but there's a continuation. If that building does become vacant, just like the Northbridge Elementary School is about to become vacant, right? So here's a slide about what is our plan for vacant town buildings, right? It happens all the time. You see buildings in many New England towns, usually schools, neighborhood schools, that either get sold or demolished. Shrewsbury is doing one right now, Beale. Spencer, when I was there, we did the old Prouty Middle School, turned into condos or other types of uses. So we have four properties that we currently own that are slated for replacement if this project were approved. We have 44 Cross Street, which is Northbridge Elementary. It's obviously being replaced by the new Balmer project. The current headquarters of Fire Station at 193 Main, the substation at Rockdale, and then the Town Hall Annex. So typically what happens when these properties become available, they've outlived their life, it's time to move on, towns build new buildings. The Building Planning Construction Committee, which is the committee here in town in charge with this type of work, would undertake what they call an adaptive reuse study. So for all of these properties. So they would produce a report through a consultant that would detail the building conditions. We would explore compatible uses and perform an economic development market analysis. So towns can't just put a for sale sign on buildings. Anything valued over $25,000, according to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B, we have to go through what they call an RFP process. So that's a request for proposals. We'd have to advertise for people's interest in our properties. It is a lot more attractive when we do that adaptive reuse study because the developer now knows what they can do with the property, what the conditions are, and what the economic market is telling us from a feasibility standpoint. That's why we take that study first before advertising the RFP. So in the RFP, we would ask for proposals from developers on what their proposed use are, what their financial backing is, their financial background, success of other projects, et cetera, et cetera. Also in the RFP, we could limit the uses that are going in there. We could restrict and prevent certain things if they're not compatible for the neighborhood. And if you don't want a gas station there or something else, we could do that in the RFP. Then you'd advertise, you'd have interviews, go through the proposals. By doing the RFP process, it allows you not necessarily to take the highest price. If there's a better project that's more in line with the community, what the community wants, you can take that project over a proposal that's worth more. And if you had no valid bids, no valid projects, you can then reject all the bids, and that's when you'll see projects or buildings being demolished. So the town I was recently in a few years ago, they recently demolished the Pleasant Street School. Advertised, nobody wanted it, such bad condition. The amount of money it took to put in the building was not worth developing or redeveloping. So one of the things we would have to do is, if this happened in May, if this project went forward, is we would probably start this process right away. Because at some point they'll become vacant, and you don't want a vacant building lying there. It costs more to insure, vandalism, and deteriorates even further when people aren't in there. So that's, sorry guys, more work ahead of you if we get this. So. More meetings. I think I skipped a slide. I'm going to go back with one other question. The NES site. So the NES site is 44 Cross Street, that's Northbridge Elementary School. And we've been asked, isn't this the best solution because it's going to become vacant in the fall of 2021 when Balmer comes online? And the first thing we talked about was just because we own a property, just because we own a building, doesn't mean it's the best location for a fire department. And that's what we found by undertaking all of these studies. So we found from the response time analysis, and this shows 44 Cross Street, it's not the best site in terms of response time. The site at Goulet, again, 94.5. I think Cross Street was in the 79, 80 range. So we have a site that provides better location, more central, for better response times. We also looked at, because it's such a small site, doing a 2-story versus a 1-story. And we know that it's not as efficient, and from a structural standpoint, it costs, and development standpoint, it costs more. And also we have to deal with demolition. I'll get to that cost in a second. But as you can see from the right, as you compare to the site that we showed earlier in terms of the circulation that we have, the parking availability we have, the access to Providence Road, room for on-site training, overflow, room for expansion, there's none of that on this site. The other thing we talked about was trying to get a 49-foot ladder through Ovian Square on every call that's north of Cross Street. So no, we didn't think this was a good solution, or the best solution. Another question we commonly get is, why was Uxbridge's station built for only $10 million and ours is projected to be significantly more? Well, there's some major differences between us. One is they only replaced the headquarters. We're looking at replacing headquarters and a substation. They left their 4,000 square foot station in South Uxbridge in place. It was built in 1990, so they didn't include it in this project, in their project. They have a smaller department and smaller volume in calls. They have 3-man crews, we have 4-man crews. So we have so many calls, we run 2 ambulances all the time. There's a 4-man crew and 2 2-man crews. Women crews can go out at any point when the ambulance is available. They have 12 full-time people, we have 17. They only do about 2,500 calls a year, we did 3,400 last year. They were actually looking to expand or grow. Their former headquarters was 6,600 square feet. They were looking to more than double that to 14,000 square feet, 118% larger. Ours, we're looking at replacing the current headquarters that we're in is 33,000 square feet. The substation in Rockdale is 3,500. And again, the 21,000 square feet I mentioned at the annex. So we're looking to replace 58,000 square feet down to 29,000 square feet in the new building and the new outbuilding. That's a 50% reduction versus they were looking to expand. And again, if you take out the annex, we're still at 36,000 square feet, going down to 29,000 square feet. Their original program was up to 19,000 square feet, but they had a site they wanted, and they chose to build there. Our building includes an outbuilding and storage, theirs does not. Obviously, we're including the planning wing. We'd like to think that it's a better use of your dollars to do that now. They have no room for on-site training. It lacks sufficient parking, poor circulation access, and as everybody knows, in a building similar to what we have now, when you come back from a fire, you stop all the traffic and you're back in. We don't have that problem at the proposed site. Actually, Chief and I, when we went to visit the Uxbridge Fire Chief and talk about their new recently built project and some of the problems with it, there wasn't even a parking spot in the middle of the day when we stopped by. There was 3 people in the building working, 2 visitors, and then us, and we couldn't find parking in the parking lot. We should not have that problem. And from a cost standpoint, it's actually pretty comparable. Even though they only built 14,000 square feet, and we're looking to build 29,000 square feet from a square foot cost, it's pretty comparable, 653 to 679. Actually, we're the 653 and they're the 679. The cost. So if you've read the newspaper, you watched the Board of Selectmen meeting a couple weeks ago, the cost of this project is proposed at $18.9 million. These things are not cheap. If you read the paper, see other projects going on, again, I mentioned Auburn and Charlton. This is what these things cost. So there's a breakdown here on the right. We'll get this up on the website. We also have a 70-page supporting document that the architects use to put together the summary. We price every material, every doorknob, everything. And then on the left, we have, I want to let you know, because this question's come up, we have built-in contingencies here. The contingencies at this point in time are pretty high. So we have, in this area here, there's contingencies for construction standpoint, and up in here. So the reason we have high contingencies at this point is because of such an early standpoint in the process. We only have a field, we have a very little bit of soil information, we don't have a full survey, we need to do more soil evaluations. So the more information we get and the more design development we do, that contingency will decrease. So it'll go from, say, 10% now to 5% when we're going through the design schematic process, and then when we finally go out to bid, that contingency will be about 2%. That doesn't mean we're going to build to 19 million. What it means is there is opportunity built in here. We just don't feel it's very commonplace in these types of projects to be conservative at this point, knowing that we not have all the information we need. So this is a comparison of our proposed project to some other projects that have been built in the last 5 years that we're aware of, some of the projects which our design teams worked on. What I'm looking at is cost per square foot in 2020 dollars. So some of these projects were built 2015, 16. So we did provide for escalation cost to get them to 2020 so we could have an even comparison. And you can see our 29,000 square feet in 2020 dollars, $516 per square foot, and these projects range from 464 to 817. Obviously, there's not all apples to apples. You have Nantucket. It costs a lot to get materials over to them. We have different price points, Westwood, Weston, we get it. But from an overall construction standpoint, we feel we're doing right by you. This isn't the Taj Mahal. We've done a lot of things to try and limit the amount of dollars that we're asking for, which allows us to have a lower cost per square foot. Again, we've taken, rather than having additional bays and building a full fire station bays for the utility vehicles, we've taken them out and we're building those at a less intense structure. We have no demolition here. It's town owned. So all those things are positives which allow us to keep the cost low. I know Northborough, which is going through their process, actually they're getting ready to start construction. They actually had to buy the land, and it's a brownfield site, and they had to clean it up. We don't have that issue. Another comparable for us is Southbridge. They're a little bigger than us, 34,000 square feet. They're undertaking their feasibility study process right now. And what was their cost? 26 million, 28 million? 28 million. So Southbridge is a comparable project right now. These are the most common two. I would say Northborough and Southbridge. Northborough at 28 million, Southbridge at 28 million, and Northborough at 22 million. Northborough paid $3.5 million for design and for purchasing the land, and they got another 18 to build it. And that was approved, and they're getting ready to start construction. So again, we're trying, we think we're doing right by you. One of the things we were asked again to look at, one of those common questions is the cost. Well, even though it's a small site, what would it take to build on NES? So we did the same type of estimate for the NES site, and that project came up at 22 million. Three main differences why that project would cost more. One is, again, a different type of structure, elevator, 2 floors. The other is the demolition and abatement associated with the school itself is approaching $1 million. I think the number was 970. The third component of why it costs more is because we have a vacant site now. We can start now, and our construction would start earlier. With NES, we would have to wait until they eventually move out of there. So there's an escalation built in for that as well. So that's the three main reasons why NES would cost more, and we feel it's not as great compared to our site. Our selected site based on response time and efficiency, parking, room for expansion, et cetera, et cetera. I already touched on that. Tax impacts. So I touched on this at the selectmen's meeting. I'm happy to talk after the meeting with anyone. Come by my office. We'll put this information up on the website. What we looked at is 3 different scenarios. You can borrow up to 30 years for a fire station. Talking to other town managers, it's not as common. Usually it's something less, maybe 25, maybe 20, depending on the economy, depending on interest rates, depending on the needs of the town. So you'll see 3 white rows on each. The top one is at a rate of 4.5%. So the 4.5%, the reason I have that one up there is because that's the same estimate that we used when we talked about the cost of the Balmer project at town meeting and in all the public meetings. We used that 4.5% interest rate. Very conservative. 19 million ballpark, total interest. Obviously, the longer you borrow, the more debt you pay, although the cheaper the annual impact. You're paying more over time. 25 years, less debt, but more because you're paying quicker. Same thing. So at a 4.5% interest rate, anywhere from 20 to 30 years, the impact, the annual average impact on the average value home in town of 329 ranges from 200 to 260 per year. Okay? So that's annual averages. But just, again, just like the Balmer project, we're not going to do even payment, we're going to do even principal because it saves us money. It'll be higher payment in the beginning than the average will be halfway through that debt time frame, and then it'll be lower than the average towards the end. What you should know is when we did go out to borrow, we borrowed $30 million, so our total responsibility for the Balmer project is $54 million. We're doing that in 2 borrowings, one of 30, which we've already done. That's at the tax rate this quarter, and then we'll be doing another $24 million later this fall or spring. So a total of $54 million out of the $100 million that's proposed for that project is the responsibility of the taxpayers. The $30 million, when we put it out, our interest rate was actually 2.7%. So we had projected borrowing $30 million over 30 years would probably cost us about $95 million. By having an interest rate of 2.7, it's only going to cost us $90 million, or it's going to save the taxpayers $5 million over the life of those 30 years, based on the fact that it's a very good time to borrow right now. So I did another chart. If we get somewhere close to the 2.7, we're in the 3% range. You can see again, it's about $5 million over 30 years. Less debt, less interest, less annual impact to the voter. Instead of 200 to 260, 170 to 230. So say $20 a month, somewhere around there, $15 to $20 a month. So what this chart shows is what our existing debt is that we have on the books now, and over the next 10 years, I could go 30 years out, over the next 10 years, what it looks like in terms of your tax bill. So, on the left, we currently have the police station roof, which will pay off in 2022. We have an annual payment of $14,000. This row is this year. So of your $13.84 tax rate, $1.29 is based on already approved debt. 1 cent is the police station roof. 8 cents is the middle school roof, again paid off in 2022. Our annual payment is $148,000. 8 cents of that 129 or 1384 is that. We also have the BVT expansion that was approved several years ago. That, I believe, is a 10-year note. So 10 years, 2025 it'll be paid off. $72,000, 5 cents on the tax rate. We just built the DPW building. A 10-year note, $2.5 million, $250,000 plus interest. Our payment this year is $294. That's 17 cents out of that 129, or out of your 1384 tax rate, is the building that we just built. And again, this is Balmer number 1, I call it. 30 years, 2049. Payment this year, the highest it will be in those 30 years is 1.7 million, 98 cents on the tax rate. This is what just hit this quarter. Your tax rate was approved by the State Department of Revenue in the fall, 1384, you'll see on your tax bill. Again, $1.29 is these projects, right here. However, you've already approved 2 other projects. Actually, one is Balmer number 2. So we're going to borrow $24 million, say next year. First annual payment 1.5. That won't hit until the following year's tax rate. It's lower than the 98.85 cents because it's 24 million instead of 30 million. Again, these go out 30 years. You've already approved that, or the voters already approved that. Another project that was already approved, it's not yet on the tax bill this year, is the artificial turf field project at the South Field. So we talked about, when we went to town meeting, we talked about a 3-year note for $2.775 million. That was the dollar amount that was approved by the voters. First year estimated payment $1 million. Here's the tax impact, 59 cents, 57, 56. Again, the highest it's going to be is the first year, and it goes down. 3 years is paid off. This is the fire station. 30-year borrowing. I'm sorry, come down here. This assumes, when I did this analysis, this assumes the current values. It also assumes this same tax rate, which is subject to the values. So we're just talking about in today's time, projecting over the next few years. It assumes a 25-year, not a 30, not a 20. I picked the middle, 25, and I picked a favorable interest rate at 3% again. So this, based on the time that we go to borrow, and it hits the tax rolls 3 years out. So the timeline for this project would be May 5th, town meeting. There would be an article in town meeting warrant for voters to approve borrowing, which requires 2/3 vote, up to a certain dollar amount, and if proposed, the 18.9. 2 weeks later, May 19th, is the annual election. The annual election, if the Board of Selectmen vote next Monday, which I'm expecting they do, would be to put a ballot question on. It would be the only question for the town related to capital. There would be also, obviously, annual elections for board positions. One article, Article 1, it will be a debt exclusion question to allow the town to increase the Proposition 2.5 tax levy to pay this payment. That's what you'll be asked for on May 19th. That's a majority vote, simple majority. Then, if that was approved this summer, we would go through the process with the Building Planning and Construction Committee on advertising the next part of the design process, RFQs for architect, OPM, get them on board, say in the fall. Start the design process, which would first be all the survey information, say 8 to 12 months for design. That puts us at the end of 2021. Then we have construction, put it out to bid, build it, 12 to 16 months. That's where 2023, FY23, so say January of 2023, 3 years from now, this would hit. So again, right now you've approved everything above this line. Everything that's above this line is already approved. Okay? Which in the next 2 years, you're going to go from 1384 to approximately 1527, all things being equal, and 1523. That's been approved. That is going to happen. The voters of the town of Northbridge approved those projects. Everything above here, the Palmer School and the turf field. So this increase is going to happen. It's already approved. What we're asking you to do is consider this. 2023, these two projects come off the tax rolls. Again, 2022. 2025, VVT expansion comes off, eventually the DPW building. And the turf field comes off this last year. This last year is the worst, if you're a taxpayer, impacts. Proposed at 1585. That is these two things coming off, these two projects coming off, and adding 75 cents to the tax rate in the last year of the turf field project. That's the worst year. The year after that, this 56 to 59 cents comes off. You're going to go back to 1524, which again is right in line with what you've already approved. So the impact moving forward eventually, it goes down. Obviously, go even further down with these ones going. What we're asking you to pay for over the next 30 years or 25 years is about the same amount that you're already going to be paying in the next 2 years, except for this 1 year. So this 1524 with this project on it is very similar to what you've already approved. By comparison to our other towns, the 10 towns around us, this is FY20 tax rates, that's the year we're in now. The average single-family tax bill, based on a value of home of $329,100. right here. Right now, Northbridge is 11 out of 11. Right now, our current tax rate is $13.84, the lowest, and $4,600 is also the lowest. So again, that $13.84 is right here. That's what you're paying today. In this year, which I'm saying will be the worst year, $15.85, in 2023, you would go from $13.84 to $15.85, which would put you in 10th instead of 11th. The only one lower would be Millbury. And your average tax bill would be 9th. The only ones lower would be Millbury and Millville. That's what we're asking you to take on in order to get this fire station done. So from a future meeting standpoint, again, I mentioned this week on Wednesday we'll be in front of the Finance Committee. We're going to do another public forum like this in March. Sorry, that's tonight. Finance Committee actually is this week, the 4th. This should say 3-4. This is tonight. Building Committee is also 3-4. This meeting was canceled. Sorry for my slip up. 3-4 and 3-4. We'll have Finance Committee and Building Committee meetings this week. Next Monday, again, we're going to be asking the selectmen to put on the ballot question 1 to ask the voters for a debt exclusion to pay for the fire station. And we'll do another one of these forums in April. Again, the voter process is May 5th. Town meeting, authorization to borrow up to a certain dollar amount. Right now it's proposed 18.9 million. That's 2/3 vote. May 19th, 2 weeks later, the debt exclusion, which is a simple majority. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions related to tax impacts and others. I have the fire chief, he can answer any questions about operations or other. We have the design team, between the OPM and the architects, can answer anything about the design process. So, question?
Are you considering solar for the new fire station?
In terms of like on the rooftops?
Yes.
Not at this time.
Okay.
We don't get reimbursement such as the school does for MSBA for building what they call a LEED building. So the more green, if you will, the better reimbursement rate you get from the MSBA. There's no reimbursement on this project. We own the whole thing. So we haven't gotten to that point. It's probably something we'll explore during the design process from a cost-benefit standpoint, but it's not included in the feasibility.
Fire truck equipment, what's the state of our fire trucks? We're going to have to buy something within the next 5 years?
Our trucks right now have all been replaced. Our oldest truck right now is 2009. As in the past, if the grant comes up, I go for it. That's how we get the ladder truck. We get $750,000 for the ladder truck, with the taxpayers and them to pay for it. All our trucks are in pretty good shape right now.
Mr. Frieswick.
Hi, Chief Boyd. Listen, I have a lot of questions, but I'll just keep it to the level. I have to ask you about, fire stations like property design to meet the needs of the public. Okay? I've always thought concentrated areas in most towns and cities, there's fire stations within that area for life and safety and property. My thing about the response time, I'll kind of add to a few things that came to me about response time and moving fire stations outside of a very concentrated building area, homes, businesses, outside area. How many Whitensville firefighters live in a proximity of that department who are going to have? Now, you're saying response time, you're saying how many people are on a truck? I heard 4, you had 6. We will see volunteer. How do you roll? You roll 2 vehicles, you roll 3 at every call. We roll at least 1 to 2, and then at the squad. Our response times were Whitensville, very quick, Rockville, very quick, to those concentrated areas. Now, let me go into the response time. If I am living in Whitensville, I go to the Western Station, I'm getting there And you're saying your response time in the truck are manned by full-time people. Does that mean you have 17 people? I don't think so. You have enough drivers to take those vehicles at every call to respond to 2 trucks and a squad or something else. That's another concern I have. So how do you get a firefighter making sure you have enough staff and they all drive?
In answer to your question, first of all,
Thank you.
back when you were on,
Yeah.
we were very compartmentized.
Yeah.
You had a group that lived in the village of Whitensville, you had a group that lived in the village of Rockville. It's not like that. People live all over town.
I understand.
Okay? So that doesn't, the response time for a call firefighter is a little different than it used to be. If you look at the statistics that we've used, our full-time people arrive on scene first, and then the call people come in afterwards. Our call people are very valuable, but as far as time response, the full-time people are the ones that cover that first. Right now, the first, that's why we use that figure from Whitensville instead of Rockdale, because during it, if you had a fire, that truck takes off out of Whitensville right away, and they're generally the first one on the scene of Rockdale, because there is no one that lives next to the fire station. That's gone. But the other problem is where that Rockdale fire station is in the wetlands. It's falling apart, and there's no real good place over there to build another one.
But I'm getting back to, if you have manpower all the time at this new station, that you can roll the same number of vehicles that we can do now. I mean, we did years ago. I mean, how many vehicles on call? You know you have a working fire. You know you've got to roll the full company. How many people can you have available right now that you can get out to the vehicles?
So that depends on the time of day. During the day, we don't have many call firefighters. They all work out of town. It's not their fault. That's where they work. We depend on our full-time firefighters and mutual aid. Okay, it's not like the old days where we could run 2 full alarms out of our own town. We can run 1 alarm out of our town, and then we're relying on mutual aid right away. It's not like the old days.
You don't have enough full-time firefighters to take our own vehicles out. We have to go for new play. I'm kind of sensing that a little bit, because it's happened. I've heard it's happened. But if you have a firefighter on one end of town now, I was just trying to say, well, how long does it take them to get down to pick up the truck that is still sitting in the fire station? You still want that truck, don't you? Yeah, what would you do? So how much time does it take from a white to firefighter now to get to that station? Does that add to the response time? I'm trying to point in.
No.
Your response time is saying from the station with a full van ready to go out the door. I'm just wondering, that's my thought, if you don't have that truck leaving, if you don't have manpower, you're waiting for a call guy to pull in to get that truck, that can add to the time of response of that vehicle.
So part of this,
If you don't have.
part of the study looked at where all the call firefighters lived in proximity to the station. We actually do better in Riverdale with the current staff that we got than we do in Whitensville. There's some people in Whitensville that got to travel a little more, yeah, but we have a group towards the center that actually would get out faster than we do now.
That's it, you know. I'm just putting these things together. I mean, you know, the response time seems to be focal point. And I just want to make sure that the townspeople understand the way, you know, that you need to talk about when you have manpower to get out and get that under 10 minutes.
I would say what they should understand is that by putting the station on the Goulet lot, it's as centralized as we could get it to the town so that everyone gets the same response time, okay? And we can cover more of the distance in town quicker.
That benefit to the concentrated areas.
Just to add, on the website, if you go under resources, the full response time analysis is in there. It's 90 pages, it's charts, tells you where the calls live, tells you what type of calls we have. So I think one of the things that commonly comes up in this discussion is a structure fire. How many structure fires, house fires do we do in a year, do you think?
Actual major fires, 6 to 7 years.
So Putting out fires is not the only service we provide. So if you look again, over the last 3 years, we've gone to Beaumont Nursing Home 871 times. In that same 3-year period, we have now had 20 structure fires. So all of these sites, again, Milford is in Plumbers, St. Camilla's on Hill Street, Linwood is in Linwood, obviously. There, we have some in Rockdale, we have some in Riverdale Mill, and then we have some in Whitensville. So yes, is this more concentrated? Yes, but look at this chart. I could have put 871 dots at Beaumont Nursing Home. The number of calls are spread out quite a bit through town, not just here. The reason we're in that fire station right now is because the mill built it and gave it to us. That's the only reason we're in that location. Only reason.
I understand, but we don't have a Rockdale.
We don't have a Rockdale Fire Department anymore. Right now, every town relies on mutual aid because no town can afford to have, like of our size, 20 people on staff. So we have 4 full-timers and we rely on mutual aid. If a call happens at noontime, it doesn't matter where that person volunteer on call lives because he or she could be working in Framingham or Boston. Doesn't matter. That's why we rely on mutual aid. Every town does because we can't afford to staff a full 17 to 20 people.
So my question again goes back to the concentrated areas. I would like to find out from all the towns that are going through a similar process of downsizing, lower amount of firefighters that are available, and making sure we get the same safety and protection to the town that the present fire department has.
I would
Now,
say-
we're not taking away from, the person who lives at, let's say on Water Street, and we've got to send somebody to go down and pick up the vehicle down there, and come back. I mean, I'm just looking.
I would say, look at the town of Westboro. They have 1 fire station, and they do a lot more calls than we do out of 1 central station.
Towns can't afford to build multiple stations these days. There are some that do. I know Needham, Weston, there's some that have replaced the substation. But we're not in the position to build 2 fire stations. We're in a position to hopefully build 1 that's the most centrally located. Are we going farther away from these folks? Yeah, but we're still, look, well within the standard time. And not only that, we increased by up to 94.5% versus where we are now. If you had a clean slate and you started and you didn't know about this and this, would you start with a station right here? Probably not. You'd probably start right here. The center of town is the Veterans Hall on Hill Street. That's where you'd start if you were going to do 1 station.
No, my point is that the response is
Somewhere here.
getting vehicles, in where we used to have 2 fire stations. I'm not saying, well, I'm saying we had a fire station in one area, to air fire station, because it was built, because it was needed, because it was waiting for town.
That's not true. Actually, it was built there because the shop had a vested interest to protect their building.
Right.
The shop built the building just for them. They were very selfish about it. And I'm sure if they were here today, they'd tell you that's what they built it for.
It's the same thing with Rockdale. Rockdale wasn't built there because it was needed there. It was built there because the mill owners built it right next to their mill.
They were never designed by anyone.
I'm saying it's the area, because people grew up, houses, all the people that worked in the shop. There was a very concentrated population back then. It's not like it is today.
Right.
We used to have woods in most areas now. But I'm saying that was, I just, what other towns, I'd like to get a study, some feedback of how other towns have done this and has it worked. Making 1 central fire station.
Again, I would say look at the town of Westboro.
Or are they putting in remote fire stations just to make sure?
It's not remote. It's central. Big difference.
I'm talking about like Hutchins, kept theirs remote. In other towns, we say central, but we really, let's say we left it in place, we would still have to have something remote. Yeah, of course we done that. I just like to hear what other towns, get the feedback or some relationship. I know it's in other towns, but
I just gave you a good
it's safety.
So I think we're going to agree to disagree. We think the safest thing for the town is to be able to cover all those calls at a 94.5% rate. So the building committee, the fire chief, the consultants that we hired, this consultant that we did the response time analysis, that's all he does. So that group feels the safest option for the town is to be centrally located and provide an increased response time of 94.5% in 8 minutes or less for the whole town. So that's what they deem safe in their eyes. I think what you have is a different view of safe, and that's okay. I think we just have to agree to disagree. Maybe you can have more conversation with the chief on a one-on-one, but I'd like to move to another question if I could. You have another question?
Well, I just want to elaborate on some other things. You have 34 people, and you've got an annex that's going on that's going to be open to public and offices. And let's say, you have to really, how much parking do you really need, and then you really have the actual parking for that site? Because now you're adding public, it's going to come to those sites. We've got how many people would come here, let's say, for a meeting, how many firefighters and show up the fire at the same time? When you put all these people trying into that site, is this going to be enough area?
More than enough.
More than enough?
More than enough. All that white area you see up top there, that's all excess parking. Instead of putting pavement in, which costs money,
Yeah.
we propose to put gravel.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
most of the public parking will handle anything that's coming through,
That could handle anything that's in the building.
or anything that the town, when they propose to this annex,
Yep.
without any problem.
Yep.
What I'd like to say, respond again on that, we know there are sites in town that we own that have buildings on them or are vacant that don't provide what you just asked. Parking, expansion, all those things. So we feel that these sites can't even come close to what you're asking. And we think, obviously, we have 23 acres there. We feel comfortable that we're going to do right and be able to have adequate parking, on-site training, room for expansion, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a plus, because we've never had enough parking for all the fires.
Exactly.
Yep.
We were parking all over.
Exactly.
And one last thing to the architect question on the doors. When you respond to a fire, there's always just 1, 2, or 3 vehicles.
It depends on the call.
Okay, typically on that.
If it's a structure fire, everything we have goes.
But on that, let's say, is it always going to be 3 vehicles?
If it's a structure fire, it's going to be everything we have. If it's a simple alarm, it's 1 or 2.
And you're talking about all these bays. I'm just wondering if particularly there's a truck, an engine, spot. Could you consolidate with maybe level wide, entry and exit?
These are all double bays.
So here's the floor plan.
All of these are double.
5 here and 5 at the
Yeah,
rear.
but I'm saying the doors, are they single for each garage, or do you consolidate into one? Because you're gonna lift it up and you just go, and you don't have to do each one of
And you
them.
make the door twice as wide as what we got. The bad part about that is if that door breaks,
One, say instead of having
then you can't get the trucks out.
more for every
So
turn.
you're only, I mean, that's different, I'm just saying, it makes sense to get it out the door. I mean, it'd be cheaper to have 1 door, 2 vehicles.
No, what we're saying is you can't.
We actually have Mr. McKeon is going to try and answer your question about the doors.
Yeah, to have a 28-foot wide door, first of all, just to carry it, we need more structure. It's something that's gonna, it's more cumbersome. And essentially, it's gonna cost more than 2 individual doors. So,
I just know that taking out a single door, it was very tough taking out a single door.
and I cannot think of a single fire station that I've seen in the past 10 years that has gone for a double wide. It's really, but they have grown up to 14 feet wide by 14 feet tall, because they can't really get any wider than that, given the roadways in this country, and of course the minimum height on on state and federal roadways is under 14 feet. So we have a size that we don't believe is going to change in the next 50 years. And that's the most cost-effective solution for a fire station. Again, double wide, going to cost a lot more. These things tend to get a lot more expensive the bigger they are.
Question?
Yeah, you're talking about response time, and you're talking about structural fires. Now, I lived here a while, and I know that there's a lot of ambulance runs, and I look at your listing there. You look at the 50% of the way up, these are all associated with retirement communities. Now, that's a tremendous number of runs. Now, I gotta wonder how much of that involves more than an ambulance run. And if these are primarily ambulances run, maybe you should relocate where we put the ambulances.
So that was thought about when we did this. A central location for the ambulance is essentially better, quicker to get to the people who need it.
Yeah, but how about the structural fires? Where's the area where most of the structural fires occur?
The NFPA kind of dictates a lot of things in the fire service. We followed their guidelines, okay? Their guideline for this one here says we should be able to cover things within 10 minutes. We did even better than that. We got it down to 8 minutes. So we covered the NFPA. I actually was talking to a lady last week about our ISO rating. She feels this is a good idea for the ISO rating also, which dictates your insurance costs.
Just one more thing, if we did that, we put, say, an ambulance station garage somewhere, and we had 4 people in there, and then we had a fire station somewhere else, we'd have to hire 4 more people to put the fire station for when there's a fire call, right? We're not gonna have the ambulance people leave the ambulance station, drive all the way down to the fire station, get in the fire truck, and then go put out a fire.
So there's a
So
lot of cross population.
the operation cost, so this has come up, why are we not building 2 stations? Why don't we have a station to the north, south, east, west, whatever? The reason is from an operational standpoint, it costs over $1 million in terms of the 2 budgets, Chief, the ambulance budget and the fire budget total. What's the total of their 2 budgets? 1.8? Is that?
Yeah,
1.8. So say half is fire and half is, so if we need to, right? So, but that's based on 4 people full-time at any given moment. So if we have 4 full-time people located up here in an ambulance building, and then we have another fire station down here, 4 people, that's going to cost the taxpayers an override, $1 million. That's forever, never comes off, it's not debt,
Remember,
paid off. We're not going to ask for that.
All our career firefighters are cross-trained as paramedics. Okay, well, paramedics cross-trained as firefighters, however you want to look at it. They do both. They're cross-trained in many different lines, hazardous materials, firefighting, and as well as emergency medical.
It's a good question. Thanks. Anything else? Sure.
Chief, you mentioned on-site training. What kind of training would that be that you do down the sewer beds that you could do up here? What's that all about?
Well, one of the biggest things we'd be able to do our aerial training. Right now, we don't have a building down at the sewer beds that has that ability. The other thing is when you're down there in the summer, if the sewer beds, I guess I don't have to say that. So we gain some space. We don't do that and fight as many fires, so we have to make sure we maintain our readiness by training all the time. So we're heavy into training. My career guys, they train every day. The call people come in, they train as much as we can get them in. The fact that we'll have a place to actually train more frequently without taking our trucks away from the fire station. We can work at the fire station, which means we have more access to the emergency equipment instead of hauling it all down to the sewer pits.
Right. Now, do you do live fire at this new site?
No, there'll be no live fire at the new site, but we will have the ability, there'll be a training tower where we can train on sprinkler systems and standpipe systems. We do our live fire training in another
Look back here, fire town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Now, will this new site have a standby generator?
Yeah.
I don't think that you'll ever need it because you're on a main line there, but just in case, as a backup, right?
Yes. It would be built as a backup.
Right. Now, how do we heat our present fire station? What do we use?
Currently, we heat our current fire station with oil. I believe this one's proposed for gas, right?
Proposed at this point, but we're looking to other, let's get into the actual design phase.
Yes.
We'll look at other possibilities too, right? But we do have at least one fire station as geothermal unit.
Well, that's a good point too, but so much is that going to cost?
Payback.
Yeah. Right. Chief, the last time I was talking to you on the open house, would you tell these fine people what it cost you last year to heat that fire station?
Last year, our energy cost for the fire station was $38,000.
How would you like to heat your house for $38,000, huh?
And what temperature do you keep that building at?
Very cold.
This one right here. That's what $33,000 gets you.
The main station's kept at 60 degrees, the substation's kept at 50 degrees.
Harry?
You got access to Suzanne Drive,
Correct.
but you don't show an access on your proposed plan.
No, we don't.
What if there was an accident out on 122?
Yep.
Right at your entrance, I mean,
So that's a good question. We've talked about this before. So that's why we have 3 lanes here. So if there's an accident, let's say there's an accident here in one lane, we have the ability for 3 lanes, right? So we have talked recently in the last couple of meetings about possibly putting, say dirt, gravel, emergency access with a gate that only the fire department has access to. So that is something we're considering. It's just not part of this. Obviously, there's a cost to it. I'm not sure what it is, but something we consider. Ideally, we're not going to want to drive through residential neighborhoods with fire trucks every call. But in the case of emergency, if we had to get out here and get out to Benson and go out that way, we'd look at that. So it is something we're going to look at. Phil?
Just looking for curiosity, you're going to have a traffic light at that entrance so that you can stop everything when the trucks are coming out?
So yes, we would ask DOT for a permit to put a light there. The good news is, if you drive by the main station now, like I do every day, twice or more, they can just pull right in. You don't have to stop, back in, all that. So, yeah.
You would think the lights.
When you're coming out?
Yeah.
Right. Yep. I have this young lady who won't be with us much longer, I heard. So, Ms. Spencer.
Going back to that chart we have on comparisons with other communities, and you talked about the Northborough proposal. There's 2 charts, and the cost per square foot is different.
Yep. One's building cost and one's total cost.
Okay, so because they were saying 18.5 million for building costs, is the 22 million including the
Design.
So when you're going down to square foot, on the right hand, it's got a 712. You see that?
This here.
Yeah, and the other one on the left, it is.
So, you guys, Mr. McKeon these are the numbers that they could find they had both for, right? In terms of the project cost?
Yeah.
So the ones on the left, we were only able to get that construction cost, not the total. So that's where that came from.
So the 22 million is total, and it's the 5, it's the one on the right.
Right.
70.
Yeah.
Okay. 712.
Anything else? Sir.
Yeah, was there any grant money out there that we could grab?
So this came up before. So there is not a program right now like MSBA has. MSBA is 1 cent on the sales tax rate that pays for school construction and provides that reimbursement. There's no program like that currently for public safety buildings, police and fire. There is a bill that's going through the state legislature, but there's always been bills going to the state legislature asking for that. So I don't know if that'll happen. We're not going to obviously wait to see if that happens, and we don't know how they're going to fund it, which is more important. It's great to have a bill that said there's a reimbursement program, but so right now the only money that's out there for public safety, if you will, for buildings, if you will, is related to regional dispatch centers, and the payouts are usually pretty small in the $1 million range. So they would do reverse 911 does feasibility study money, say 40 to 50,000. They will do building money about $1 million and infrastructure to outfit the interior for about $1 million. Those are the only grants that are out there for public safety. There's nothing for police and fire like this. Sir.
What's going to happen with the existing park field, is that any of it going to
Yep.
go out?
So the first thing we did, I have to go to the picture. The first thing we did was I went to the Parks and Recreation Committee and asked them about the use of that field. Should I go back to it? So they actually sent us an memo, I think, that said that they don't really use that field. It is out of the way for them. They have a lot of vandalism up there. So they don't really have any leads up there at all. So they were in full support of using this. It's not like they're losing space that they're actively using. So.
Wow, it is there in May. I mean,
Yep.
the town's really ignored it for the last 20 years. It's just, it's been there, but it really hasn't been utilized. It looks like the roadway is where the existing entranceway is.
So I would say we probably have to I'll get more information from Parks and Rec if you want. Over the last 20 years, in terms of ignored, I just think they felt that they had other spaces that they would use, and this one wasn't. So I'm not saying it's never been used as a playground. I'm never saying Pee Wee soccer never went up there in their practice, or T-ball went up there. I'm sure it did. But we think that the cost benefit to the town of losing that space, which actually they recommended to us that they don't use, is in the best interest of the town of using this site.
Remember, the site was actually purchased for school.
Oh, I know, but I also live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like I said, the town really never utilized it properly, in my opinion, and I've been there since
Well,
'74.
so they have other fields in town. I know. But I can get further information. Other questions? Really? You know how hard I worked on those tax tables? Seriously? All right. I'm sure you're going to pull me aside after the meeting to talk about it, so that's fine. But so again, to the last slide, we have some meetings coming up. Wednesday we'll be at the Finance Committee. You're certainly welcome to come to that. That's the conference room in the town hall on the main floor. I had the wrong date up here, I apologize. It was canceled last week's Finance Committee. It's now 3/4. The Building Planning Construction Committee will be meeting same time in a different room, basement, to talk about this project. We have a final draft report that is being submitted this week, and that will go online as well. So I'll put this presentation up. We have a final report that will go up. If there's any information that you feel we haven't given you, I want to know about it. I had this presentation every day. I added 2 slides today. So if there's anything I have not given you that you need in order to make an informed decision, please reach out to me. Stop by Town Hall, email me. My phone number is on the website, town website. Please track me down, or Chief White. We'll be happy to get that information for you. Selectmen's meeting next Monday to vote on the ballot. April public forum we'll be having. The town meeting warrant, I think it closes April 13th, something like that. And there'll be an article on that, so you'll see language regarding that. And obviously these 2 important dates, town meeting and election. So.
What you say was the worst case increase? It was 2023?
All right, so I'm going to go back to that.
$5 increase.
So again, this is estimated. I have no idea what the tax rate's going to be next year, because it's based on the values in town. No idea. So I can only go based on today's values. But by doing that, I'm comparing us to the other years, and then I also compare us to other towns based on today's current values. Okay? So that's what this does. It assumes the current values, which means this 1255 stays the same. It'll go up and it'll go down. Okay? But from a tax rate standpoint of this being equal, at an estimated 25-year borrowing for a fire station, getting an interest rate of 3%, the first year, which is 3 years out, which will be the last year of the turf project, with these 2 projects coming off, I'm estimating it going to $1,585 from $1,384. This is today. You look at your tax bill today, that's what it says. That 1 year will go here. And then the year after, it will go back down below 1533 to 1524. Again, that's an estimate. If somebody calls me in 7 years from now and I'm still here and says, hey, it was 1589, I'm gonna be mad at you because it's an estimate. It's best I can do.
Yeah, but it's actually 2021 when we jumped from 13 something to 15.
That is correct.
The other part is.
Correct. So,
So the big jump is not just the fire station. It's
right.
everything taken into consideration.
I 100% agree with you. But you already voted and approved.
Right.
So this number, again, you're right. I just wanted to show the worst case.
Yeah.
So you're right. Next year, you're going to have a jump because we're going to add 85 cents from Balmer number 2 borrowing at 24 million, and an estimated 59 cents because it's the first year of the turf field. So you are 100% correct. Next year, your tax bill rate will be in this range, and it will be that if the values are exactly the same. So it won't be, but this is the number you can expect the increase by adding these two. You approved this already. So my point was showing this, that this worst case year, if you will, because it adds the fire station, even though 9 cents comes off, you add 75 cents, that's where the 1585 comes. But then the year after, because the turf goes away, you go back to 1524, which is right in line with what you've already approved. So what I'm saying is if you've okayed that amount of debt, 2 years from now, well, I'm sorry, 2023, you'll be in that
The
same.
fire station itself is not causing the big jump. It's everything taken into consideration. The fire station is just making a small jump, really.
Yep, yep. So again, going back to this, so I'm estimating if we get a good favorable rate, the average bill will be 170 to 230. So call it 240, $20 a month. So somewhere between $15 and $20 a month to have a state-of-the-art fire station that these guys can provide optimum service and an optimal location for you for at least the next 50 years. That's what we're asking.
Well, all I gotta say is, we took the tour. And if you haven't, you have to. You have to take the tour. You have to see the station. It's basically from, after how many years? Over 100 years? It's basically falling apart. And these guys deserve more than what they've got right now.
We appreciate that comment. We heard that a lot, and that's why we're going to do at least one more, if not 2 more, before town meeting. So, yeah, thank you.
Take that tour. They'd be very surprised.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.